What is a dirty thing that you did and absolutely don't want to tell anyone? Story 1. When I was a kid, I had this corkboard thing that hung above my bed by a string over a nail in the wall. I had been collecting racy pictures from magazines for a while before I realized the corkboard is double-sided, and in a moment of genius, decided that I would simply pin the pictures to the back of the corkboard facing the wall. When I wanted to do the deed, I could just flip it around. Super convenient. One day I was laying in bed reading comics and my mom burst in to tell me to clean my room, but the sudden opening of the door caused the nail to pop out and the corkboard fell and hit me straight in the face, then flopped over porno side up. My mom took one look and said, "Jesus Christ," and just shut the door. Story 2. I stole my neighbor's internet and used it on the regular to download Spanish language, which I would then burn on CDs and trade for wares from my Mexican drug dealer. I'd have to watch everything to make sure it worked, so I'd put said on high speed and basically fast forward to the end in order to ensure it played okay. I failed the absolute piss out of Spanish in high school, and only passed with my gift of a D- because I promised the teacher I'd never take any of her classes again. I retained nothing from my class in high school, but a lot of inappropriate words and phrases are burned into my brain that I'm guessing aren't ever going to come up in daily conversation. I'm a huge prude, but this was not my first time peddling smut. I worked for almost a decade at the only store head shop in a small, rural area. This was back in the 90s, when adult VHS rentals were a big thing still. After the store closed at night, one of my jobs was to take the damaged VHS titles and try to use Scotch tape to repair them. Again, I'd have to play them in fast forward to ensure they worked before going back out on the shelves. I suppose this means I should put quality control on my resume, but I'm thinking it's a skill set no one is really looking for. Story 3. I'm a 45-year-old man. I live in a co-op apartment building in New York City. I worked on a building beautification project with a fellow resident about 6 months ago. I'm guessing she's about 30 years my senior. All during the project, we shared a lot of laughs and formed a comfortable friendship. At the end of the project, she invited me to her apartment for dinner. We shared some great conversation and a lot of wine. At some point while I was talking, she put her hand over mine, which I was resting on the table. She leaned in for a kiss and I reciprocated. We had sex that night. It was good sex too. A week or so later, she called me up and asked if I could change a light bulb in her ceiling. It was a pretext for us to have sex again. Since then, we've established a relationship where she texts me requesting some help, I go over to her place, and we have sex. If I told anyone in my life that I'm having a sexual relationship with a woman in her mid-70s, I'm not sure what the reaction would be. I think they'd think I've lost my mind. Story 4. Over the last year, I've gone from being like almost 300 pounds and miserable to 150 pounds and fit as f***. My parents, co-workers, and doctor are all like, "Wow, this is so amazing, I'm proud of you. How did you do it? Most people can't do that without dolls." And I just laugh and say, "Oh, calorie deficit," which I mean is true, but not the whole story. What actually happened was I apparently had a bad binge eating disorder I was in denial about, and that's what stopped any attempts dead in their tracks. Last year on a 3-day weekend, I came home and decided, I got 3 days off, time to fly, and proceeded to take 5 tabs of LSD. Then it swung hard into bad trip territory, and I felt like I was going to just straight up die while watching the carpet bubble. Then after the trip, I realized whatever was in my brain that made me get dopamine rushes from food and crave food while stressed and depressed just was deleted. Gone. Poof. So I just ran with it, like only 3 people know what actually happened. It's not like an awful secret, but I'm not going to tell my parents or coworkers like, "Yeah, I got lit the f*** up on LSD and accidentally cured my eating disorder." I dunno, man, I don't make the rules. Jesus Christmas, I checked this on my way home from work and it was like 2 replies. Then I get home and I'm about to work out and look and see 168 updates, lol. Yeah, I know this isn't NUSFW in a sense, but it's not really something that's a thing here. I live in a really small rural town in the Midwest and work at a machine shop. I'm sure any type of admitted drug use would be frowned upon, lol, even though yeah, it's in my own time. I'm also sometimes hesitant to tell people because it was an intense trip. I'm like a high-dose veteran. I would regularly do 3-4.5 tab trips, and I handled it fine. That one grabbed me by the throat and threw me down the rabbit hole. It was totally not for the faint of heart, lol. But it's crazy to think what we have access to and don't even know it. Story 5. Either the act itself or this comment will eventually come back to bite me in the ass, but it's been more than 15 years, so fuck it. Smacking the shit out of an asshole child fellow camper during summer camp. Kid was an absolute terror to everyone, screaming, crying at night, destroying things, etc., etc. It was clear the parents coddled him, treated him like their little perfect prince, and never disciplined him. They also called the camp multiple times a day to speak to him, which was against the rules. The kid needed a swift kick in the ass and to finally be told no. No one dared touch the kid for obvious reasons, but one day he went too far and I'd had enough. I was a junior counselor in training at the time and was supervising the archery course. The kid was terrible at it and was getting irate that other kids were hitting the target and he wasn't. So he took an arrow and began hitting the kid next to him with it. I snatched the arrow from him and he immediately let out a blood-curdling scream like a banshee that just wouldn't end. So I smacked him upside his head and told him to stfoo. By some miracle it worked on the spot. Kid was practically an angel the rest of the week. It was like I literally knocked some sense into him. Story 6. One hot sweaty day at the shop I used the blue chalk for the snap line to powder me balls. Couldn't take the sticking anymore. Yes, it worked. Being a white guy, my junk looked a lot like a Smurf though. Normally I'm a Gold Bond guy, but my work bottle was out. I have to wear full FR. It was about 98F and matching humidity. There is no A or C in the shop. Would def do it again. Story 7. When I was 14, I broke into the convenience store up the street from my house. I grabbed multiple cartons of cigarettes. I didn't and still don't smoke cigarettes, so I was just wanting to sell them to the neighborhood kids. One kid tried to blackmail me and say he would tell on me if I didn't give him cigarettes for free. I told him I had a pack I had opened and tried to smoke one but didn't like it, and he could have that one. I went home, grabbed the pack, took each cigarette out, and twirled the filter of each cigarette on something gross. My cat's butt, my dog's butt, touched it lightly to my cat's turds, even twirled a filter on my own. I brought him another pack as well just to make him keep quiet. Never told him either. Even though he doesn't know it, pretty sure this is what started his eating phase. Story 8. When I was in high school, I was hanging out with one of my teammates on the football team. We went through a McDonald's drive-thru and got an extra Big Mac by mistake. We saw a woman a little overweight walking on the sidewalk. I sat in the window of the car as we passed and threw it at her while my friend the driver screamed, "Eat it, fatty!" The woman looked and the Big Mac literally exploded on her face, lettuce flying, the bun shredded and scattered in the air. We laughed and thought we were so cool and funny telling our friends the story. I think back on it now and realize that it's not funny. That's a person with feelings and that might have caused long-term damage to her mentally. I wish I could find her and apologize for my own closure. I think about her all the time and hope she is okay and forgives me. Story 9. I try to separate work and personal life completely, but my hospital had just had an excellent joint commission survey, and the CFO mid-42nds, very tall powerhouse of a woman, wanted to take the entire maintenance crew out for drinks. Or at least, that's what she pretended we were doing. Her intentions were to have a whole gangbang. The night starts off normally, but she is very when it comes to taking shots. She wants all three of us drunk. We obliged. And suddenly out of nowhere, she is showing me something on her phone. My drunken eyes focused in and I saw a massive pair of fake and a full spread vagina. I'm married and autistic and I don't f around with anyone like that. My director left immediately after that. I left shortly after he did. Nobody knows what happened after that, but there is a lot of speculation about the last guy and her, but he never admitted anything to me after. He's married with kids, as were all of us. It doesn't end there, but I'm ranting, so I'm gonna wrap it up. Come Monday, she called me into her office and had me shut the door. It was very horrible, bosses like. Think Jennifer Aniston in the doctor coat with nothing on underneath. I resisted and told her I'm not about that life. Couple days later, she was fired. I'm not a snitch, so I kept it all to myself. Obviously, wife knew everything that was going on. I don't keep shit from her. She went on to tell HR about all the stuff we talked about at the bar. I smoke weed. HR pulled me into the office about the weed rumor and I absolutely lost my shit. I told HR that their CFO is assaulting employees and they're going to take the word of the abuser and come after their hard workers that just aced their GECO inspection. I threatened them with a lawsuit. That was the absolute end of that. I no longer get drug tested. This was all about 3 years ago. Story 10. At 16, I stole a fleshlight from a local sex store, then drove off not being able to wait to use it. I used it while driving and actually finished, but post-nut clarity set in. I threw it out the window into what I thought was some woods, but I looked last second to have an image burned into my mind. The image of a used fleshlight exploding onto a gravestone from a cemetery at 45 miles per hour. Reality set in then. Story 11. Throwaway for obvious reasons. I'm probably too late for this to be seen, but years ago my partner ditched me while I was pregnant. Like, for good. Years later, my ex's girlfriend started working at the same place I worked. I didn't realize who she was or anything for a while, but we had hit it off and became good work friends who would occasionally get drinks together after work. She would always complain about her boyfriend but would just call him my boyfriend, so I still didn't make the connection. I didn't realize who she was or anything for a while, but we had hit it off and became good work friends who would occasionally get drinks together after work. She would always complain about her boyfriend but would just call him my boyfriend, so I still didn't make the connection. We ended up going out for drinks after work one night when her boyfriend was out of town and ended up going back to her place and hooking up big time. Me to be a side piece hookup to someone who had a partner, I know. Well, the next morning, her boyfriend came home earlier than expected. Turns out her boyfriend is my kid's dad, who I hadn't heard from since being pregnant. I never pursued child support or anything. He was pissed that I was there. I grabbed my shit and bolted. He's in my or our kid's life now, and we all three have a friendly enough relationship, but I still don't know if he knows that I hooked up with his now wife. None of us have ever addressed it. So, I've slept with my kid's dad and his stepmom. Story 12. I used to get jerked off from my ex right behind my mom when she would drive her home. I'd always offer for my ex to sit in the front seat because I was a nice guy. In reality, she'd hold my hand until we felt comfortable that she could hide it and then go to town while I sat behind my mo. Happened multiple times too. P.S. Her house was 30-ish minutes from mine and didn't usually get brought or picked up by her parents unless they were near. We were 15 at the time and I had no brain. Glad she cheated on me by getting a train run on her during a cruise ride. Her family told me that was fun too. Story 13. Stole my friend's dog's tramadol when I was helping her move to a different city for university over 10 years ago. He didn't take it anymore. I was an opiate addict, and to make the whole duration of this 3-day trip I had to. I knew I didn't have enough heroin at the time and would be useless if I was sick, had to drive her car as she was in the moving van, required a ferry. It was a 3-day thing. She didn't know about my addiction either. I feel like that was such a low moment, but I was almost another decade at it before I got clean, so clearly things got worse after that for me in reality. The shit you do on drugs. Still doesn't know to this day, and I'd be lying if I said it still doesn't eat at me a bit. Story 14. I aggressively hugged a younger girl so she would stop bullying me. More specifically, I was in high school, as was she. She was at least 2 grades lower than me, but she felt fully capable to call me names and to try and get a rise out of me. And I couldn't avoid her either because she took the same bus as me. Considering there was nothing I could get the school to do and nothing that anyone else would do, I decided abruptly hugging her out of nowhere would psych her out and make her leave me alone. It worked. She never came near me again. However, the interaction can be seen as an assault of sexual kind, so I never mentioned it to anyone I knew. My intention was never to commit an assault. It was only to mess with her head so she would stop interacting with me. Had I had known at the time what I was going to do could have been seen as a crime, I wouldn't have done it. Story 15. The first time I masturbated, I was at a friend's house. He was passed out in his bed with the TV on and a Girls Gone Wild infomercial came on. I was never told what to do, but I just started stroking. Again, no one had told me anything about it, but as I approached my first orgasm, I kept letting off because I thought it was gonna be pissed. I must have edged myself for closer to an hour. I finally just thought and let it happen. When I started inspecting, I kept looking over to my sleeping buddy and went to the bathroom. I really thought something was wrong with me. So Anthony, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I masturbated in your brother's bed. I had to get it, bro.